What would you do if a courier showed up at your door with legal papers right after your husband watched hotel security footage you never thought he'd see? How did a simple weekend camping trip with my best friend spiral into public humiliation, family chaos, and the end of my marriage, all because HR decided to get involved? Can a husband really come back from this, or is some damage permanent? The kitchen felt suffocating that Friday evening as I packed my overnight bag. Michael sat at our granite breakfast bar, his laptop open, pretending to focus on quarterly reports while I moved around him like we were strangers sharing an elevator. So, remind me again where exactly you're camping. His voice carried that edge I'd grown to hate, suspicious, controlling, everything wrong with our marriage wrapped up in one simple question. I folded my favorite silk pajamas into the bag, the ones he hadn't seen me wear in months. I told you already, Mike, it's a group thing. Some people from college, including Sarah and Jessica. We rented a cabin up near Pine Lake. The lie rolled off my tongue so smoothly it almost felt true. Pine Lake's pretty remote. Will you have cell service? Probably spotty. I zipped the bag shut with more force than necessary. Why? Planning to check up on me every hour? Michael's fingers stopped moving across his keyboard. That's not fair, Lise. I just want to know you're safe. Safe from what? Having a good time, remembering what it feels like to laugh. I turned to face him, letting all my frustration show. When's the last time we did anything fun together, Michael? When's the last time you looked at me like I was more than just Sophie's mom or your house manager? He closed the laptop slowly, that deliberate way he did everything when he was trying not to lose his temper. We went to dinner last month. That business dinner with your boss doesn't count. I grabbed my phone from the counter, seeing Simon's text waiting. Can't wait for our weekend away. You deserve this. My heart did that little flutter it always did when he messaged me. Who's texting you this late? Michael asked. My sister. She's excited. I'm finally doing something for myself. Another lie, but what was one more? God, Michael, do you hear yourself? You're interrogating me about going camping with friends. This is exactly why I need space. He stood up, running his hands through his hair, the way he did when he was stressed. At 36, he was still handsome. The same strong jawline that had attracted me in college, the same thoughtful brown eyes. But somewhere along the way, those eyes had started looking at me like I was a problem to be solved instead of a woman to be loved. I'm not interrogating you. I'm your husband. I'm supposed to care where you're going. Caring and controlling are different things. I shouldered my bag, feeling the weight of my deception. I'll be back Sunday evening. Try to have some fun with Sophie while I'm gone. Maybe take her to that new ice cream place she's been asking about. Michael's expression softened at the mention of our 7-year-old daughter. She's been asking about that place for weeks. Then take her. Be the fun parent for once. The words came out harsher than I intended, but I didn't take them back. Let him feel guilty. Maybe it would make this easier. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my sister Daria. You deserve happiness, Lise. Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for taking care of yourself. Have an amazing time. Michael must have seen me smile at the message because his jaw tightened. Have a good trip, Lysandra. He only used my full name when he was really upset. Part of me wanted to drop the bag, tell him the truth, work on our problems like adults. But a bigger part of me was already thinking about Simon's laugh, the way he listened when I talked, how he made me feel beautiful and interesting instead of tired and taken for granted. I will, I said, heading toward the door. Don't wait up Sunday. As I loaded my bag into the car, I caught a glimpse of Michael standing at the kitchen window, watching me leave. For a moment, I almost turned around. Almost. Instead, I started the engine and backed out of our driveway, my heart racing with anticipation and guilt in equal measure. 20 minutes later, I was pulling into the parking lot of the Riverside Inn, a boutique hotel downtown where Simon was waiting for me. This wasn't camping. This was something else entirely. The Riverside Inn's lobby glowed with warm amber lighting, all exposed brick and leather furniture designed to make you feel sophisticated and slightly rebellious. Simon was already there when I walked in, looking unfairly handsome in dark jeans and a navy sweater that brought out his green eyes. "There she is," he said, standing up from one of the leather chairs. "My favorite escape artist." I felt that familiar flutter again, the one that had been getting stronger over the past few months of late-night work conversations and increasingly personal text messages. "I can't believe I actually did this." "I can." He pulled me into a hug that lasted just a beat too long. "You've been suffocating in that house. You needed this." Simon had been my friend since college, one of those easy friendships that had survived marriages and moves and career changes. When he'd started working at my company 6 months ago, it felt like fate. Someone who actually understood me, who remembered the person I used to be before I became Mrs. Michael Vane, before I became someone who packed school lunches and scheduled dentist appointments and forgot what it felt like to be desired. "Did you check in already?" I asked, suddenly nervous about the logistics of what we were doing. "Room 314, I got us a suite." His smile was warm, but loaded with possibility. "Separate sleeping areas, don't worry. I'm not presuming anything." But we both knew why we were here, even if neither of us had said it out loud. The elevator ride to the 3rd floor felt eternal and too short at the same time. Simon kept up a steady stream of conversation about work, about the camping story we'd agreed on if anyone asked, about anything except the fact that we were about to spend the weekend alone together in a hotel room. "This is nice," I said when he opened the door to our suite. It really was. A living area with a couch and small dining table, a kitchenette, and 2 separate bedrooms. Expensive but not ostentatious. The kind of place where married people came to work on their relationships or end them. "I wanted you to be comfortable." Simon set my bag down near one of the bedroom doors. "No pressure, Lise. We're just 2 friends having a weekend away from our complicated lives." I nodded, but my phone was already buzzing with a text from Michael. "Made it safely? Let me know when you get settled." "The warden checking in?" Simon asked, reading my expression. "He's not a warden." The defense was automatic, even though I'd spent months complaining to Simon about feeling trapped, misunderstood, taken for granted. "Of course not. Sorry." Simon moved to the kitchenette and pulled out a bottle of wine. "I just hate seeing you so unhappy. You light up the whole office when you smile. But at home, I'm invisible." The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "Do you know he didn't even notice when I got my hair cut last month? 3 inches off, and he said nothing. But he notices if I forget to pick up his dry cleaning." Simon poured 2 glasses of wine and handed me one. "You're not invisible to me." The way he said it, looking directly into my eyes, made my stomach flip. I took a large sip of wine and texted Michael back, "All settled. Beautiful spot. Going to be a great weekend." Another lie, but this one felt more like a promise. We ordered room service and talked for hours, the conversation flowing like it always did between us. Simon told me about his divorce 3 years ago, how his ex-wife had made him feel like nothing he did was ever good enough. I told him about the slow death of my marriage, how Michael and I had become roommates who happened to share a child. "You deserve better," Simon said when I finished describing our last anniversary. "Dinner at a chain restaurant where Michael spent half the time checking work emails." "Do I? Maybe I'm just as much to blame. Maybe I'm not the wife he wanted either." "Don't do that." Simon moved closer on the couch, close enough that I could smell his cologne. "Don't make his neglect your fault. You're an amazing woman, Lysandra. You're smart and funny and beautiful, and any man who can't see that doesn't deserve you." When he kissed me, I didn't pull away. Later, much later, as I lay in the king-size bed in the suite's master bedroom, Simon's arm around me, I felt more alive than I had in years. My phone sat silent on the nightstand. I'd turned off the ringer hours ago, unable to deal with any more check-in texts from Michael. No regrets? Simon asked quietly. I thought about my husband at home, probably asleep in our bed, trusting that I was safely tucked away in some rustic cabin. I thought about Sophie, who would wake up tomorrow asking when Mommy was coming home. I thought about the marriage vows I'd just broken and the life I'd just complicated beyond repair. No regrets, I whispered, and in that moment, I almost meant it. What I didn't notice was the small security camera mounted discreetly in the hallway outside our room, or the way the hotel's digital system automatically logged every keycard entry and exit. I was too caught up in the fantasy of being wanted again to think about evidence or consequences, or the fact that lies have a way of revealing themselves at the worst possible moments. Sunday morning came too soon, and with it, the crushing weight of reality. Sunday brunch at Millfields had been a family tradition for 3 years, ever since Sophie had declared their chocolate chip pancakes the best in the universe. Usually, I looked forward to these lazy weekend mornings. Good food, easy conversation, Sophie chattering about her week, while Michael and I pretended our marriage wasn't slowly dying. Today felt different, dangerous. Michael had barely spoken to me since I'd walked through our front door the night before, my hair still smelling faintly of Simon's cologne, despite the shower I'd taken at the hotel. He'd been polite, asked about my trip in front of Sophie, but his eyes held something I'd never seen before. Suspicion, maybe. Or worse, certainty. "Mummy, did you really sleep in a tent?" Sophie asked as we waited for our table. She was bouncing on her toes, excited by the idea of outdoor adventure. "Not exactly a tent, sweetheart. It was more like a cabin." Another lie, but what was I supposed to tell my 7-year-old? That Mommy had spent the weekend in a hotel room with another man, while Daddy took care of her like he always did. "Did you see any bears?" "No bears, just trees. Lots of trees." I caught Michael's eye over Sophie's head. He was watching me with that same careful attention he gave quarterly reports, looking for inconsistencies. "Here they are." My mother-in-law Helen's voice cut through my anxiety like a knife. She was walking toward us with her usual perfect posture, her silver hair styled in the same elegant bob she'd worn for 20 years. Behind her came my sister Daria, looking effortlessly beautiful in designer jeans and a cashmere sweater. "Lysandra," Daria pulled me into a hug that smelled like expensive perfume and good decisions. "How was your girls' weekend? You look refreshed." The way she said it made me wonder if the glow Simon had given me was as obvious as it felt. It was exactly what I needed. "I'm sure it was," Helen said, her tone carrying just enough edge to make me uncomfortable. My mother-in-law had never quite approved of me, though she'd been polite enough over the years. Today, her politeness felt razor-sharp. We were seated at our usual table by the window, Sophie between Michael and me, Daria and Helen across from us. The Sunday brunch crowd buzzed around us, families enjoying their weekend rituals, blissfully unaware that our particular family was about to implode. "So tell us about this camping trip," Helen said after we'd ordered. "Where exactly did you go?" "Pine Lake, about 2 hours north." I kept my voice steady, casual. "Just a group of old college friends. We rented a cabin, did some hiking, sat around the fire talking about old times." "How lovely. And which friends were these?" "Anyone I'd remember from your wedding?" "My wedding." Where Simon had been my unofficial photographer, charming all the aunts and making everyone laugh during his impromptu speech about friendship. Where he'd danced with me twice, once for the camera, once because he'd asked. "Just some people from my sorority. You wouldn't know them." I reached for my water glass, needing something to do with my hands. "Mummy's phone was broken," Sophie announced suddenly. "Daddy tried to call her yesterday, and it went straight to voicemail. He was worried." The table went silent. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, waiting for an explanation that wouldn't come. "The service was spotty up there," I said finally. "I probably should have mentioned that." "Yes," Michael said quietly. "You probably should have." Daria jumped in. bless her. Oh, you know how those mountain areas are. I can barely get a signal at my yoga retreats. It's actually refreshing, being disconnected from everything. Absolutely, I agreed, grateful for the support. It was nice not having to check emails every 5 minutes or worry about work drama. Speaking of work, Helen said, cutting into her eggs Benedict with surgical precision. How are things at the office? Michael mentioned you've been working late more often. Another minefield. Simon and I had been staying after hours together, ostensibly to catch up on projects, but really to talk, to build the emotional intimacy that had led to this weekend. Michael had noticed, of course. He noticed everything, filed it all away in that methodical mind of his. Just busy season, you know how it is. I forced a smile. Actually, it's been nice having some adult conversation during the day. The office can be pretty social. I'm sure it can, Michael said, and there was something in his voice that made my stomach clench. Sophie saved me by spilling her orange juice, creating a flurry of napkins and apologies that shifted everyone's attention. But when the mess was cleaned up and conversation resumed, I caught Helen watching me with the same analytical expression her son wore when he was solving problems. You seem different, she said suddenly. More energetic. I told you the weekend was exactly what I needed. Sometimes you have to step away from your routine to remember who you are. And who are you exactly? The question came from Michael, soft enough that only I could hear it. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed on the table. A text from Simon. Missing you already. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. I grabbed the phone quickly, but not quickly enough. Michael's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, and Helen's eyebrows rose a fraction of an inch. Work? Daria asked innocently. Just a friend checking in. I slipped the phone into my purse, my heart racing. You know how people worry when you're out of touch. Yes, Michael said, standing up suddenly. They do. He walked toward the restroom, leaving his napkin folded neatly beside his half-finished plate. Helen watched him go, then turned back to me with eyes like steel. Lysandra, dear, I hope you know what you're doing. I don't know what you mean. I think you do. She dabbed at her lips with her napkin. I've been married for 40 years. I know what a woman looks like when she's keeping secrets. Daria reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Some secrets are worth keeping if they make you happy. The two women stared at each other across the table, representing two different philosophies about marriage, duty, and happiness. I sat between them, feeling like a child caught between arguing parents. When Michael returned, he placed his credit card on the table without sitting down. I need to get going. I promised Sophie we'd stop by the park on the way home. His voice was calm, controlled, but I could see the storm building behind his eyes. As we gathered our things and said our goodbyes, I felt like I was walking on ice that was already starting to crack. Helen hugged me goodbye, but her embrace felt like a warning. Daria whispered in my ear, "Call me later. We need to talk." In the car, Sophie chattered about the playground while Michael drove in silence. I stared out the window thinking about Simon's text, about the way he'd held me Saturday night, about the choice I was going to have to make between the life I had and the life I wanted. What I didn't know was that Michael had already made his choice. While I'd been crafting lies and managing family dynamics, he'd been making plans of his own. The reckoning was coming, and it would arrive faster than I ever imagined. Monday morning at Pinnacle Logistics felt different the moment I walked through the glass doors. The usual buzz of conversation seemed muted, and I caught Jennifer from accounting, shooting me a look that felt loaded with meaning. Maybe I was being paranoid. The weekend with Simon had left me hypersensitive to every glance, every whispered conversation. Simon's cubicle was 3 rows over from mine in the open office layout, close enough that we could make eye contact, but far enough apart to maintain professional distance. When I sat down at my desk, he was already there, looking devastatingly handsome in a charcoal suit that made his green eyes pop. He caught my eye and smiled. that slow, intimate smile that had become our secret language over the past few months. My stomach fluttered the same way it had in the hotel room, and I felt myself smiling back before I could stop myself. "Good morning, Lysandra." My supervisor, Patricia, appeared beside my desk, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Hayes would like to see you in his office when you have a moment." Mr. Hayes, the HR director. My blood went cold. Of course. Is everything okay? I'm sure he'll explain everything. Patricia's smile was professional and gave away nothing. I gathered my coffee and notepad, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. HR meetings were routine in my job. Policy updates, training schedules, the occasional employee complaint. This was probably nothing. But as I walked toward the executive corridor, I noticed Simon wasn't at his desk anymore. And Jennifer from accounting was definitely watching me now, her expression somewhere between sympathy and fascination. Mr. Hayes's office was all dark wood and diplomas, the kind of space designed to make you feel small and accountable. He was sitting behind his massive desk when I knocked, his expression grave. "Come in, Lysandra. Please, have a seat." I settled into one of the leather chairs across from his desk, crossing my legs and arranging my features into what I hoped was professional curiosity. "Good morning, Mr. Hayes. Patricia said you wanted to see me." "Yes, I did." He opened a manila folder on his desk, and I caught a glimpse of papers, photographs, official-looking documents. "We need to discuss your weekend activities." My weekend activities. The words hit me like a physical blow, but I kept my expression neutral. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. My weekend was personal time." Normally, yes, it would be. However, when those activities involve another employee and potentially impact our workplace environment, they become my concern. The door opened behind me, and I turned to see Michael walking in. My husband, in Mr. Hayes's office, on a Monday morning when he should have been at his own job across town. "Michael," my voice came out higher than I intended. "What are you doing here?" He didn't answer immediately, just took the chair beside mine with the same careful control he'd shown at brunch yesterday. He was wearing his Navy interview suit, the one that made him look like the successful, reliable man I'd married, the man I'd betrayed. "Mr. Hayes," Michael said quietly, "I believe you have some materials to show my wife." My wife, not Lysandra, not Liz, my wife, like I was a legal entity rather than a person. Mr. Hayes reached into the folder and pulled out a stack of photographs. He slid them across the desk toward me, and my world tilted sideways. Hotel security footage, black and white, time-stamped, unmistakably clear. Simon and me in the hallway outside room 314. Simon and me kissing by the elevator. Simon and me entering the room together Saturday evening. Simon and me leaving together Sunday morning, his arm around my waist, my head on his shoulder. "The Riverside Inn contacted us this morning," Mr. Hayes said in the same tone he might use to discuss vacation policies. "Apparently there was an incident with their security system over the weekend, a false alarm that triggered a review of their footage. During that review, they identified 2 of our employees." I stared at the photos, my mouth dry as sand. I don't understand why this is any of the company's business. Company policy clearly states that romantic relationships between employees must be disclosed to HR. More importantly, both you and Mr. Renner called in sick Friday afternoon, citing family emergencies. Using sick leave to conduct an affair violates both our attendance policy and our ethics code. We didn't. I looked at Michael, searching for some sign of the man who'd loved me for 12 years. "Michael, this isn't what it looks like." "What does it look like, Lysandra?" His voice was so calm it scared me. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like my wife lied to me about a camping trip so she could spend the weekend in a hotel with another man. We're friends. We've been friends since college. You were just what?" Mr. Hayes interrupted. Because I have credit card records showing Mr. Renner paid for the hotel room. I have keycard logs showing you both entered and exited together multiple times. I have restaurant charges for 2 people, spa services for 2 people, and room service orders that were clearly romantic in nature. The spa services. I'd forgotten about the couple's massage Simon had surprised me with Sunday morning. At the time, it had felt romantic, indulgent, like something I deserved after years of being taken for granted. Now it felt like evidence in my own prosecution. "Where is Simon?" I asked, grasping for any kind of support. "Mr. Renner has been placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. He'll be meeting with our legal team this afternoon." Administrative leave. Legal team. The words swirled around me like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. "This is insane," I said, my voice getting louder. "You're treating us like criminals for spending time together. We're both adults. You're both married," Michael said quietly. The room went silent. I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw something I'd never seen before. Not anger, not hurt, but a kind of cold resolution that terrified me. "Michael, please, let me explain." "Explain what? The lies? The fake camping trip? The way you turned off your phone so I couldn't reach you while you were with him?" He reached into his jacket and pulled out his own folder. "Or should we start with these?" More photographs. These were from his phone, screenshots of text messages. My text messages with Simon over the past 3 months. Messages I thought I'd deleted. Conversations I thought were private. "How did you—" "Our phone plan, Lysandra. Family sharing means I can access the account records. I've been watching the pattern for weeks. The late-night texts, the deleted messages, the way you started dressing differently for work." He spread the screenshots across Mr. Hayes' desk like playing cards. "I hired a private investigator Friday morning. When you didn't answer your phone Saturday, I had him check the hotels in the area." A private investigator. My husband had hired someone to follow me. "You had me followed?" I had my suspicions confirmed. Michael's voice never wavered. 12 years of marriage, Lysandra. 12 years, and you threw it away for him." I looked around the room at Mr. Hayes with his professional sympathy, at the photographs scattered across his desk, at my husband sitting beside me like a stranger. This wasn't how it was supposed to happen. Simon and I were supposed to be careful, discreet. We were supposed to figure things out slowly, make decisions like adults. "I want to speak to a lawyer," I said finally. "That's your right," Mr. Hayes replied. "But first, I need you to clean out your desk. Your employment here is terminated effective immediately." Terminated. Fired. For the first time since this nightmare began, the full scope of what was happening hit me. I wasn't just losing my marriage. I was losing my job, my income, my reputation. Everything I'd built over the past 5 years was crumbling because of one weekend. "This isn't fair," I whispered. Michael stood up, straightening his tie with the same methodical precision he brought to everything. "Fair would have been talking to me about our problems instead of running to another man. Fair would have been ending our marriage before you started a new relationship. Fair would have been thinking about Sophie before you decided to blow up her family." Sophie. Our daughter, who had no idea that her world was about to change forever. "Michael, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can—" "No," he said simply. "We can't." He walked toward the door, then paused and looked back at me one last time. "I'll be filing for divorce this afternoon. My lawyer will be in touch about custody arrangements and asset division. I suggest you find somewhere else to stay tonight." And then he was gone, leaving me alone with Mr. Hayes and the scattered evidence of my destroyed life. The house felt like a crime scene when I pulled into our driveway that evening. Michael's car was there, along with a silver sedan I didn't recognize, probably his lawyer, or maybe the private investigator he'd hired to document my betrayal. The curtains were drawn, and I could see shadows moving behind them, people discussing my future without me. I sat in my car for 10 minutes, trying to gather the courage to face whatever was waiting inside. My hands were shaking. They'd been shaking since I'd walked out of Mr. Hayes's office with a cardboard box containing 5 years of career memories. Photos of office parties, awards for Employee of the Month, the coffee mug Sophie had made me in art class, with World's Best Mom painted in crooked purple letters. World's Best Mom. What kind of mother destroys her child's family for a weekend of feeling wanted? The front door opened before I could decide whether to go in or drive away. Michael appeared in the doorway, still wearing that navy suit, but with his tie loosened, his hair slightly mussed. Behind him, I caught a glimpse of a woman in a business suit, definitely a lawyer. Lysandra. He walked toward my car, and I rolled down the window. We need to talk. Where's Sophie? At my mother's. I picked her up from school and told her we needed to have some grown-up conversations tonight. His voice was steady, but I could see the exhaustion around his eyes. She'll stay there until we figure out arrangements. Arrangements, like our daughter was a logistics problem to be solved. I followed him inside, past the lawyer who nodded politely and continued packing documents into her briefcase. The living room looked exactly the same. Sophie's art projects stuck to the refrigerator, my book club selection on the coffee table, the throw pillows I'd spent hours picking out to match the curtains. Normal life, frozen in time, while everything underneath it rotted away. This is Rebecca Martinez, Michael said, gesturing toward the lawyer. She's helping me understand my options. Rebecca looked like the kind of woman who charged $500 an hour and earned every penny. Sharp suit, sharper eyes, and a handshake that said she'd seen this exact scenario 100 times before. Mrs. Vane, I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances. Are you? The words came out more bitter than I intended, because you look like Christmas morning to me. Rebecca's expression didn't change. I'll be in touch about scheduling depositions. Michael, call me if you have any questions about the restraining order paperwork. Restraining order. What restraining order? A precautionary measure, Rebecca said, gathering her things. Given the emotional volatility of the situation and the need to protect the minor child's interests. Protect Sophie from what? From her mother? From instability, Michael said quietly. From having to watch her parents destroy each other. Rebecca left us alone in our living room, surrounded by 12 years of shared life and the wreckage of everything we'd built together. I sank onto the couch, the same couch where we'd watched movies and argued about money and made love during Sophie's naps when she was little. How long have you known? I asked. Michael sat across from me in his reading chair, maintaining distance like I was contagious. Known for certain, since Friday. Suspected. Months. Why didn't you say anything? What was I supposed to say? Honey, are you having an affair with your co-worker? You would have denied it, gotten better at hiding it, made me feel crazy for asking. He leaned forward, his hands clasped between his knees. I kept hoping I was wrong. I kept thinking you'd come to your senses, remember what we had. What we had? I laughed, but it came out harsh and broken. When's the last time you touched me, Michael? Really touched me, not just absent-minded kisses goodbye or obligatory sex on your birthday. So this is my fault? It's both our faults. We stopped seeing each other years ago. We became roommates who happened to share a child and a mortgage. I stood up, pacing to the window where I could see Mrs. Peterson walking her dog like it was any other Monday evening. Simon sees me. He listens when I talk. He makes me feel like a woman instead of just a function. Simon is married too. The words hit me like cold water. What? Did you think I wouldn't check? He's been separated from his wife for 8 months, but they're not divorced. He's been telling people at work that he's single, but legally, he's just as married as you are. I felt something crack inside my chest. Simon had lied to me, let me believe he was free when he was just as trapped as I was. How many other lies had he told? How many other women had he made feel special and seen and chosen? That doesn't change anything between us, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Doesn't it? Michael pulled out his phone and showed me the screen. He called me this afternoon. After the meeting with HR, after he got suspended, after his own wife found out what he'd been doing. He called you. To apologize. To tell me it was all a mistake, that he never meant for it to go so far. He threw you under the bus, Lysandra. Told me you'd been pursuing him for months, that he'd tried to keep things professional, but you wouldn't take no for an answer. The room spun around me. Simon, my Simon who had held me and told me I deserved better, had blamed everything on me the moment things got complicated. That's not true. I know it's not. I've seen the text messages, remember? I know who initiated most of the conversations, who suggested the hotel weekend, who paid for what. Michael's voice softened slightly. But that's who you chose, Lise. A man who would betray you the second it became convenient. I sank back onto the couch, the full weight of my situation finally hitting me. I'd lost my husband, my job, my reputation, and my lover all in one day. I'd destroyed my daughter's stable home for a man who wouldn't even stand by me when things got difficult. What happens now? I whispered. Michael was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice was tired but determined. Now you pack a bag and find somewhere to stay while we work out the legal details. Rebecca is filing for divorce tomorrow morning, along with a motion for temporary custody and asset protection. Asset protection? To make sure you can't drain our accounts or damage our credit while this gets sorted out, to protect Sophie's college fund and the house and everything else we built together. He was treating me like a criminal, like someone who would steal from her own child out of spite. Maybe that's what I'd become in his eyes. Not the woman he'd married, not the mother of his daughter, but a threat to be managed and contained. I don't have anywhere to go. Call your sister, call a friend, call a hotel. You seem to like those lately. The cruelty in his voice was new, and it cut deeper than his anger had. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and scrolled through my contacts. Daria would take me in, but she lived in a studio apartment across town. My parents were in Florida, and I couldn't bear to explain this disaster over the phone. My work friends were no longer an option. News of my firing would spread through the office like wildfire. I need to see Sophie. Tomorrow, when you're calmer, when we can figure out how to explain this without traumatizing her more than necessary. I'm her mother, Michael. You can't keep her from me. I'm not keeping her from you. I'm protecting her from a situation she's too young to understand. He stood up, straightening papers on the coffee table with mechanical precision. Pack a bag, Lysandra. I'll give you an hour, and then I need you to leave. As I climbed the stairs to our bedroom, my former bedroom, I caught sight of myself in the hallway mirror. I looked exactly like what I was, a woman who had gambled everything on a fantasy and lost. My hair was disheveled, my makeup smeared from crying in the car, my clothes wrinkled from the longest day of my life. In the bedroom, I packed mechanically, clothes, toiletries, the few pieces of jewelry that had been mine before the marriage. Everything else belonged to the life I was leaving behind, the life I'd destroyed for a weekend of feeling special. My phone buzzed with a text from Daria. Just heard from Mom about your job situation. Coming over now. Don't make any decisions until I get there. Too late for that advice. I'd already made all the decisions that mattered, and every single one of them had been wrong. When I came downstairs with my suitcase, Michael was waiting by the front door. For a moment, he looked like the man I'd fallen in love with in college, vulnerable, hurt, but trying to be strong. I loved you, he said quietly. For 12 years, through everything, I loved you. I just wish that had been enough. It was enough, I whispered. I was just too stupid to see it. But it was too late for honesty, too late for regrets, too late for anything except the slow, painful process of untangling a life we'd built together and learning to live with the choices that had destroyed it. I walked out of my house, my marriage, and my old life, carrying nothing but a suitcase and the devastating knowledge that some mistakes can't be undone. The real reckoning was still to come. 3 months later, I was living in Daria's studio apartment, sleeping on a pull-out couch and working as a temp at a medical billing company for $12 an hour. The fall from my comfortable suburban life to this cramped space, filled with my sister's yoga equipment and self-help books, had been swift and brutal. The divorce proceedings had been a masterclass in legal precision. Michael's lawyer, Rebecca Martinez, had approached the case like a surgical procedure, clean, efficient, and devastating. Every text message, every hotel receipt, every lie I'd told had been catalogued and presented to the court as evidence of my unfitness as a wife and mother. I'd hired my own lawyer, of course, a tired-looking man named Gary Hoffman, who charged half of Rebecca's hourly rate and delivered about a quarter of her competence. He'd tried to argue that infidelity shouldn't impact custody arrangements, that my relationship with Simon was irrelevant to my ability to parent Sophie. But when the full scope of my deception came to light, the fake camping trip, the misuse of sick leave, the lies to our daughter, even Gary had to admit we were fighting an uphill battle. The court is going to focus on stability, he'd explained during one of our meetings in his cluttered office. Your husband has the house, the steady job, the family support system. You have the right to visitation. Visitation, like I was a distant relative instead of the woman who had carried Sophie for 9 months and raised her for 7 years. The custody arrangement was brutal in its reasonableness. Sophie would live primarily with Michael, spending alternate weekends with me, and 1 evening per week for dinner. I could attend school events and medical appointments, but all major decisions about her education, healthcare, and welfare would be made by her father. The financial settlement was equally devastating. Because I'd been fired for cause, I had no claim to alimony. The house, with its substantial equity, would remain with Michael as Sophie's primary residence. Our savings accounts had been frozen during the proceedings, and when they were finally divided, my share was barely enough to cover my legal fees and security deposit on a studio apartment I couldn't afford. But the worst part wasn't the money or the custody arrangement or even the loss of my comfortable life. The worst part was watching my daughter slowly distance herself from me, confused and hurt by the sudden upheaval in her world. "Why can't you just come home, Mummy?" she'd asked during our first supervised visit, her 7-year-old mind unable to grasp the concept of divorce. "Sometimes grown-ups make mistakes," I'd explained, hating myself for the inadequacy of the answer. "And sometimes those mistakes mean things have to change." "What mistake did you make?" "How do you explain adultery to a 7-year-old?" I'd asked myself. In the end, I said, "I hurt Daddy's feelings very badly, and now we can't live together anymore." Sophie nodded solemnly, but I saw the shift, the way she clung to Michael at pickups, the careful way she spoke during our visits, shielding him from more pain. Simon vanished after HR's investigation and his own divorce. No calls, no texts. He'd moved to another city for a fresh start. Men could reinvent themselves. Women carried the shame forever. Our friends chose sides. Team Michael. Invitations vanished. I became the cautionary tale whispered at school gates. My sister Daria grew tired of my presence on her couch. "You need to rebuild," she said. "You can't stay stuck." Then came the lawyer's office. The divorce was finalized, but Michael was suing me for $50,000, emotional distress, investigator costs, even reimbursement for marriage counseling I'd attended in bad faith. Alienation of affection laws still existed here. His lawyer, Rebecca Martinez, was thorough. If I couldn't pay, wage garnishment, asset seizure, bankruptcy. Worse, Michael sought to relocate with Sophie to North Carolina for a promotion. Better schools, family nearby, a fresh start away from the scandal. 12 hours away. I'd see her once a month, maybe. "He can request it," my lawyer said, "and given your situation, he has a strong case." I stared at the papers, shaking. Michael wasn't just divorcing me, he was dismantling any chance of recovery, ensuring my punishment lasted years. I signed the settlement for $25,000, years of payments I couldn't afford. 6 months later, Sophie moved to North Carolina with Michael and his new girlfriend, Emma. She sent polite updates about Sophie's adjustment. "I miss you, Mommy," Sophie said on a video call, "but I like it here. Emma makes good pancakes, and Daddy smiles more." Daddy smiles more. Proof my family was better off without me. I was 34, in a studio apartment, working 2 part-time jobs to pay legal debts, seeing my daughter 6 days a month if I could afford the trip. I'd traded 12 years of marriage, a home, a career, for a weekend with Simon, a man who disappeared when reality hit. Some mistakes don't just end marriages, they end entire lives. The woman who packed that overnight bag no longer existed. In her place was someone harder, lonelier, wiser about betrayal's true cost. Michael's revenge was perfect, methodical, legal, complete. He used the law, the courts, and my own choices against me. I couldn't even be angry anymore. I'd handed him every weapon.